Hello everyone. Today in this video we're going to be going over a Copepod taxonomic identification from a species that I pulled off of the Massachusetts Maritime Academy doc. So to start, a little bit about the sample I pulled out was a Nauplius copepod. Some things to look at are its kingdom, Animalia, its phylum is Arthropoda, it's got the subphylum Crustaceae, its order is Decapoda, and the genus being Nauplius. So how can you identify these copepods? They typically have a short cylindrical body that's divided into a number of different segments. You can look anywhere from like 5, 6, or 7. They typically have very long antennae protruding from the head. These can be longer than the body, sometimes a little bit shorter, typically around 1 to 5 millimeters long. Like I said, they have that cylindrical body with the rounded head, sometimes triangular. You can look at how many eyes are visible and if there's a pair of appendages on its first segment. So some copepods you could expect to find around Massachusetts or the Massachusetts Maritime Academy. You've got the Arctiidae, I apologize for the pronunciation in advance, Calenidae, Centropagae, you've got Metridia and Timoridae, each labeled up top. You can kind of see some of those similar features, the long antenna, cylindrical body. Some of these is kind of hard to see the eye, but this one in particular, you can see that eye poking up off the top. So these are some of the features that you want to pay attention to. So as I identified before, this is a Nauplius copepod, which is a copepod in its larval stages. So some of the outlying identifications, you can see these two antennas that's shown by those black arrows. They protrude from its roundish head. Then you've got that singular naupliar eye on its head, which is shown by that orange arrow. You can also look at those two antennas kind of towards the center of the body, which is shown by those white arrows protruding off the side. And then finally there's those mandibles protruding from the back. And these are all very important features to take into account when you're trying to identify what this species may be. So kind of to look between them, you can see several similarities and differences. You can see the two antennules, while on the Nauplius copepod it's much shorter and kind of not as refined. It's still there. Eventually, as it molts, it'll turn into that copepod, and that's when you'll see that more defined antenna. The copepod itself may be more defined, but they both do have that naupliar eye. And the antennals, as I said, the antennas are longer and more defined. The copepod also has a more developed urosome, which is that tail protruding from the back. So you can see the eye kind of right here on the Nauplius copepod, and then that more defined eye on the other picture. Those are some important features to look at when trying to identify the species to the right. So how I was able to figure out that this was a Nauplius copepod. So initially trying to compare it to the other copepods that I had been observing that could be around Massachusetts, they're not quite exactly the same, so you're not really seeing an immediate similarity between them. The sample I got from the doc, as I said, it didn't match many of the copepods that could be found, but comparing their taxonomic features, I was kind of able to deduce that this species is a copepod and it's in its larval stage, which is that Nauplius stage. With this graph to the right, you can see it's going to go from that egg, and then it's going to continue to hatch and then molt, following down the line. And as it molts, it's going to become more defined until eventually it enters that copepodite stage. So the sample we're looking at now is most likely in the N5 or the N6 group. It's still defining, it still needs to molt more, but as it molts and continues on down that line, it's going to become more defined and turn into that copepod. So that was my taxonomic identification. Thank you for watching.